My first job was when I was 16 working at McDonald's. And like a lot of McDonald's workers, I was under the employment not of the McDonald's Corporation, but an owner operator who owned several local stores for $4.50 an hour. And hey, that was 25 cents above minimum wage. I got to learn the ins and outs of serving customers at a high velocity in a pretty busy location. Some days were slow, sure, but other days were so busy I barely had time to think. So, for example, I was there for the launch of these things called Teeny Beanie Babies. Back when Beanie Babies were a huge fad, people saw as an investment for some reason. And we had lines going all the way out to the parking lot starting at 6 a.m. The customers were limited to 6 per person and could only get them if they bought a Happy Meal. So all day long, we had to make burgers and fries and chicken nuggets for people who really just wanted the stupid toys. And many people would just throw the food in the trash or leave it on the counter once they got the Beanie Babies out of the bag. It was crazy, but my owner-operator probably still made a ton of money on that, and that's one of the interesting things about McDonald's. Talk to anyone in the McDonald's owner-operator franchise space, and they'll tell you that McDonald's has made more millionaires than any corporation on earth. Running a McDonald's can be a hugely profitable enterprise, and that's one of the reasons the McDonald's Corporation has really strict rules about who can franchise and what the standards for a franchise location are. They also dictate where new restaurants can be built. They say this is to ensure that every McDonald's location is optimally situated to maximize profitability, and the idea is pretty simple. If an owner-operator franchise owner is making a lot of money, the McDonald's Corporation is too. The desire for standardization goes all the way back to Ray Kroc, the founder of the McDonald's Corporation, and his desire to ensure that every McDonald's had the same menu, standards, and level of quality, what he called QSC&V. And it's carried over into the franchising model for many corporations today. But around the time I was working at McDonald's, another fast food chain, Subway, was rapidly expanding through a franchise model, and their approach was very different. Instead of carefully managing their franchisees, they went for a rapid growth strategy in the 1990s, going from just over 5,000 stores at the beginning of the decade to nearly 14,000 by the end of it. They eventually became the largest restaurant chain by location, which is pretty impressive, and the reason why Subway is famously the entry-level franchise. Even today, it's only $15,000 to start one with an expected investment of around $250,000 to $500,000. They make up that low fee in fees on goods sold. McDonald's, by contrast, reportedly has a long waiting list and won't even talk to you unless you have over $500,000 in liquid assets and another $500,000 in net worth. And the franchise fee is $45,000 plus a lot of training and investment. About $1.3 to $2.3 million to get a full restaurant going. Now, McDonald's might have made a lot of millionaires during the days of Ray Kroc, but today you have to be pretty much one already to get into the game in the first place. Subway sounds like a better investment, but it's also a brand in decline that's been closing hundreds of stores per year, while McDonald's is constantly reinventing itself and investing heavily in innovation. McDonald's also has an average profit margin of around 25%, or just over $700,000 per restaurant per year, while Subway's is probably closer to 13 to 15%, or about $45,000 to $70,000. That's a pretty low return, especially when you consider that owner-operators have to work in the stores to keep labor costs down. But Subway's chief appeal has long been to immigrants and working-class families who have less capital but want to get into the franchise game, and they fill that niche well. Even so, it's worth asking, does franchising really add enough value to be worth all those fees? And surprisingly, the answer is more or less yes, provided you're invested in the right franchise. So, let's take a look at franchising and see how it works. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this is the Marketing Gateway. So let's first differentiate what it means to be a business owner and what it means to be a franchise owner. So let's say I decide to open Sean's Sicilian Pizza Shack, a pizza place with an emphasis on thick pan crust pizzas. Sounds great, but every decision I make about this restaurant is going to be on my shoulders. where I get my ingredients and supplies, how the restaurant looks, where my logo is and what it looks like, how my brand's communicated, what my service model is, and so on down the line. I'm on the hook for every service needed and also responsible for figuring out how to deal with legal, financial, and regulatory issues. You'd better believe I'll be working in the restaurant pretty much every day until I can afford employees who I've trained to do things my way. And you'd also better believe that when I have an eye on expanding to a second location, I'm going to be super involved in that process too, so that my standards between those two restaurants stay the same. The problem I'm going to have is an inability to scale and to see rapid growth. I'm either going to have to get my hands on enough capital to open several locations and then really work hard to train my staff to ensure each location is as good as the others, or I'm going to have to franchise my idea to other would-be restaurateurs. They'll presumably be willing to buy into my proven business model and pay me some fees to replicate my success, but I'll also have to establish processes and standards that I can not only teach them, but also hold them accountable to. That's the path of a restaurant owner, and honestly, it's a very tough one. Opening multiple restaurants is hard enough, but franchising is a whole other beast that requires you to have a business operations team just to manage the franchisees. And quite honestly, most of the time, the original location is going to be the best one anyhow, because most or all of the franchisees aren't going to have built up a new business themselves and learned the tough lessons from doing so. So let's instead say that I decide to be a franchisee. Franchising is a shortcut to getting up and running because it allows me as a restaurant owner to buy a proven system and a brand that already works. Some of the brands out there that you might not even realize are franchises include things like the Bonefish Grill, Nothing Bundt Cakes, Mathnasium, Outback Steakhouse, H&R Block, Caribou Coffee, Pet Supplies Plus, and Meineke. These are all brands that you'll see in strip malls and shopping centers, but they're typically run in ways that feel corporate because of the standards in place. For restaurants, there are well over 100 choices for national chains and hundreds more for regional chains. One of the hottest restaurants right now is Jersey Mike's, which is absolutely booming due to high customer satisfaction scores and profitability. They also have incredibly high standards for franchise owners. Chick-fil-A is also a very popular franchise, though they also have extremely strict rules for owner-operators. Freddy's Frozen Custard and Steak Burgers and Culver's are both strong franchises with similarly strict controls in place. And surprisingly, Domino's Pizza is still going strong after all these years. It's actually doing a lot better for franchisees than Pizza Hut, which owner Yum Brands just announced they're selling off due to a shift in their priorities. Many other national pizza chains are also struggling compared to Domino's. So I like pizza. Let's say I buy into Domino's Pizza as a franchisee and I'm assigned a territory in a growing community with a lot of young families. Good people for selling pizza to, right? The great likelihood, though, is I'll be working in that restaurant myself, hiring staff and training them myself, and dealing with all of the aspects of restaurant management as an owner-operator myself. The good thing about Domino's is that they have a relatively low cost to get started, a fast payback period of about 2 or 3 years, and a pretty low level of risk relative to other franchises. The national organization has a strong advertising network and a great technology platform, and the brand's proven with a great track record and easily understood business model. The owner profits are high enough that I could be on the path to making $1 million within a decade, and if I reinvest those profits into opening more stores or taking over existing ones from other franchise owners, I could have several $1 million in the bank by the time I'm ready to divest. That sounds great. And what I'm saving as an owner-operator is all the headaches of starting a business myself. I don't have to come up with a brand name or a business model or a training system or deal with any of the headaches that come with starting my own business. And in fact, I'm going to be associated with a known, popular, and well-respected brand, which will make it easier for me to acquire customers, easier for me to keep them, and easier for me to make them happy because they know what they're going to be getting. But I'm also going to potentially make a lot less money than I would be if I built up a brand on my own. I'm going to have to pay fees. I'm going to have to buy supplies directly from Domino's. I'm going to have to contribute to the advertising fund and keep my restaurant up to corporate standards, which means if they want me to upgrade my facility or include more expensive ingredients or processes, I have to do it. And this is where the entrepreneurship angle of running your own business becomes tricky. Franchises allow business owners to take less risk because they're buying into something proven that has a template for success, but they also get less room to be creative and to try new things to see if they work. If you run a Domino's and spot a local opportunity to serve your community with specially made cuisine catered to the tastes of your customers, it's much harder to do so under a franchise model than your own restaurant. And you may even find that you feel less like a business owner and more like an employee who's paying for the privilege of being employed, as many owner-operators do. In fact, it's one of the most common complaints about franchising. There's also a problem in how franchise models tend to incentivize lowering labor costs whenever possible. In many franchise businesses, labor costs are significant and cut heavily into margins. And owner-operators who want to take home more pay either have to work those hours themselves or cut labor costs by paying staff less or running skeleton crews. This has a marked effect on service quality and makes a lot of franchise restaurants struggle to hit customer satisfaction benchmarks because the employees are overworked and underpaid. Only the ones with high standards for service, like Jersey Mike's, Chick-fil-A, and other chains like them, tend to enforce guidelines about good hiring practices and retention strategies. At the end of the day, franchises are really an interesting and popular way for people to get into business without having to be experts at marketing. And I personally think that's a great thing because marketing is a skill set that's not for everyone. What those business owners lack in creativity, they make up for in potential. And the franchises as well can offer huge potential in terms of revenues. And often the franchise corporations are going to do the best jobs of running ads, creating promotions, and introducing new products anyhow, because they can afford the expense of conducting those activities and hire the expertise needed to do them well. But since all franchises are not created alike, one thing that I'll mention to any would-be franchise owners out there is to do your homework before you buy into a franchise business. That's good advice for any business venture, really, but since franchise companies often pitch themselves as a sure thing that can't fail, it's important to remember that yes, they can, and your success depends on how well you can fit into the mold that they're selling you. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and this has been the Marketing Gateway. See you next time. So our plug this month is for animal welfare and rescue, and I'm not going to mention any one particular organization as a place that I want you to designate your attention because there are so many that are in need. And whether you have a local animal shelter or humane society or a place that's doing trap and release or anything along those lines, there's always a need to donate to help support the care and rehabilitation of animals in your area. One group that I do like to donate to is Stray Rescue of St. Louis. They are very well regarded in terms of their reputation. They have a 90% score on Charity Navigator, and they do a great job of getting to know the animals within, especially the urban areas that have been abused or neglected or just set loose, have gotten loose from careless owners or things like that. And they help these animals to begin to trust humans again and to find forever homes. And I respect and admire their mission so much. But there are many other animal groups out there as well that are looking after and caring for animals that have been discarded. Now, I want to say I'm an animal lover, and there are many cats and dogs and other adoptable pets out there that people get with great intentions. You know, when they're puppies or kittens, they're cute, right? They're fun to have, but they can't care for them properly. And instead of trying to find a good forever home for these pets, they'll go out and they'll drop them off in the woods, or they'll, just kind of let them go loose in their neighborhood or things like that. And this almost always is one of the worst things you can do for these animals because they wind up coming back to where humans are living because they're dependent on humans for food. They get in fights with other pets. They get in fights with wildlife. They get hit by cars. A lot of bad things can happen. And the people that are out there watching for these animals, caring for them, having compassion for them are people that I respect and admire like you wouldn't believe. So again, I want you to take some time, research your local animal welfare organizations in your area, and be sure to give. Because especially during the summer, these animals are threatened like you wouldn't believe by the heat and by just all the additional activity that's going on. And so anything you can do to help will make sure that these animals get another chance at a great life.